All right, if our guests will, our panelists, I should say, will unmute themselves and turn their video on, it would be great. Welcome to the 4 o'clock focus. This is our last session of the year and a really key one given all the events that are going on today. For those of you who have just joined us, we do this as a regular part of being in Commerce Lexington. We have this on afterwards. On a YouTube channel. So if you have friends or family and you think that it would be very beneficial for them to see, the link will go up within 24 hours and you'll be able to share that out with them. With that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A at the bottom. And then with that, also, Kelly, I will turn it over to you and news from Commerce Lexington.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, I'm Kelly Bates with Commerce Lexington. And this event, 4 o'clock focus, developed earlier in the year with the onset of the COVID-19 as a way to share best practices and information with our members and try to keep everyone connected. Today's topic is going to focus on mental health, which seems really fitting right about now. We have Brant Briggs from Key Assets Kentucky and Velva Reed Barker from New Vista, who are going to give us some tricks and of the trade, so to speak, to try to help us all continue to navigate this time right now. That'll be moderated by Bill Dotson, who you just heard from Rocker, which is a technology consulting firm, and Debbie Green, a strategic marketing consultant with Bringing in the Green. So welcome. Thank you for spending a few minutes with Commerce Lexington and our guests, and I'll throw it over to Bill.
All right, so we're going to get started today. Kelly will probably drop off. Kelly, and if there's any news that you want to share, feel free to send that over to me, and I'll put them in the chat for all of our attendees to be able to get. And other than that, though, Debbie, since you know both of the people who are speaking, I'll let you give them the intro, and at that point, we'll start getting into our Q&A, because I think this is going to be a great session given everything that's happening and what I believe is our second resurgence of COVID.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. Thank you to Brant and to Velva for joining us today as we focus on the very important topic of mental health. I first just kind of wanted to give both of you a little bit of an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your organizations. Velva, I know you're with New Vista, and I'm sure that and I think you also are in your own private practice. So I'm sure you have a couple of different perspectives that you can share with us. And I wondered if you could describe a little bit about your organization and the needs that you meet and kind of some of the things that you're seeing right now. And then we can kind of pose the same question, Brant, over to you in your role at Key Assets.
Sure. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Bill. Appreciate your time. Well, New Vista's community mental health used to be called Comp Care back in the day, and bluegrass.org. So we just went through a rebranding last summer. So some of you are probably very familiar with us, and maybe some of you aren't. We serve 17 counties in the Bluegrass region, and all our services went to telehealth back in March. We responded very quickly, which when we talk about anxiety, I have a lot of clients that come in seeking services how to cope with anxiety. But I got to say, even us in the mental health field, and I'm speaking of myself, my anxiety level went quite high during March, after the March the 13th. I'm director of the SUD outpatient clinic on Mechanic Street here in Lexington. And also we have MAT services at our facility. And so we had to go into pretty quickly of providing the safest care we could for our clients and our patients. So we went into a lot of safety precautions in our clinic, patient safety through SAMHSA. We are MAT services, which is medically assisted treatment. So we had to start doing, having our patients, we have 2 doctors there, 2 psychiatrists, come in kind of shifts, and we had take-homes for some of our patients that were in a safe environment, take home their medications, and the ones that needed daily medications, we did do social distancing, mask wearing, and this started back in March. So we were pretty quick on a draw. We were getting prepared. And then we went to telehealth in our outpatient setting in April. We rolled that out, got our staff trained, which was a pretty quick response, I felt. Even though there seems to be some stigma attached to telehealth, actually our failed to keep rate went down because I think people needed social connections. I think they needed to speak with their therapists. They needed to speak to their doctors. They needed to see other people and to calm. This was a calming period. If you remember how we all felt back in March and April. So now it's kind of served as kind of just what we're doing now. We do have some patients come in who do want face-to-face contact, but very few of those. And we are doing social distancing and mask wearing and following CDC and OSHA guidelines. In my private practice, I've seen the same. Mostly I'm doing Zoom, and Brant may be also doing the same thing, but that's a platform we're using, and just trying to help people where they're at, meet them where they're at currently, and give them some strategies. I've also seen in my private practice more children who parents, of course, I'm retired from Fayette County Public Schools where I was there for 27 plus years, school social worker, then an administrator, and just my own grandchildren going through NTI. It's been stressful for parents, teachers, staff. I think sometimes we forget about our wonderful staff people in our public school systems and our private school systems who are now going through this. So I think we've all had to learn this together, but I think our community has responded. Our mayor, our government has responded very positively here in Lexington of providing, as soon as we could, resources for our community. And I know New Vista, we've done that. We've got an app now that people can log on to get help, which apps are very good for especially young people who want to do that and want to have that. So we've just kind of had to go with it and learn as we've gone. But I think we've responded in a very positive way. And I think we've seen some good results out of that, and a lot of people seeking more services now than ever before.
Good. Thank you for that update. And it sounds like you definitely transitioned quickly. And Brant, you may not have as much of the historical perspective, but as far as things that you kind of are currently seeing, and maybe talk a little bit about the specialized population that you all serve too.
Yes, and again, thank you, Bill and Debbie, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And Debbie alluded to that I'm kind of new in my role, so I'm still kind of learning some of the aspects. But I have been in mental health within the region for over 10 years, so I am familiar with some of the trends and what we're experiencing. And one of the things that Key Assets of Kentucky has that makes us a little unique to some of the other providers is that we have residential homes that we provide we basically provide all the care for individuals ages 16 to 21 who have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder or some other DID deficiency, and they are committed to DCBS. They're children in care. And so what we do is we provide a safe, healthy, livable environment for them and provide 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 round care for these individuals to ensure that they're getting their basic needs met, they're getting education met. Basically, we are providing the best care that we can because we found that in the past, the state was sending a lot of these kids to other inpatient facilities. And we were having these kids grow up in institutions and things like that really took away from that nurturing environment that we kind of, we all want to see in our day-to-day life. And so that's kind of what we've been known for, and a lot of work we've done with foster care. We've done all these other, more specialized treatment aspects. And so what we're trying to do is we look ahead and moving into the next year and wrapping up this year is trying to grow and implement a little more outpatient services for our community. We all know that, even before the pandemic happened, there's a lot of mental health needs in our community. And it doesn't matter how many places you have, there's always somebody who's needing services. And so for us, we looked at that and decided that, it's a good time and a good opportunity to help try to meet people who are desperately in need. And, looking forward and where we want to go is that we're trying to work not only with children, but we're also wanting to work with adults, the geriatric population. We want to cover that whole spectrum of care across the whole generation and trying to be able to be there for the community and open up those services that are convenient, they're affordable, they're easily accessible to our populations and our clients that are within, our area. And, we serve some of the similar areas as New Vista. I mean, we're in Woodford, Montgomery, Scott, Clark, Fayette, Jessamine, and Madison. So we do serve a lot of the counties around Fayette County as well. And so one of the beautiful parts about telehealth is it's allowed us to reach clients that we never would have been able to reach. We've been able to, make contact with those clients who don't have transportation or maybe don't have the financial means to get to an office. And so that has really been helpful in getting people services who probably haven't had services or never thought that they would be able to get services because it was just either unaffordable or it was out of reach or any kind of barrier that they face. We've been able to eliminate a lot of that. So we've been very fortunate, even through, I hate to say that there's anything good that comes out of the pandemic, but that is one of the good things that has come out, is the sense that we've been able to get people more care. And that's not just mental health, but that's across the whole physical health world as well.
I think that's a great point. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that we talk about in the tech space, and I think it might have been someone from Microsoft that said this, is essentially since COVID began, companies have gone through like 2 accelerated years worth of digital transformation. Telehealth existed a long time ago. It just did not become as prevalent nor as needed as it has in this past year. So I congratulate you guys and any other organization that's using that telehealth, because, I can pick my phone up and have a conversation with a physician of any kind, a therapist of any kind now. And I don't want to quite say it's on demand, but it's pretty close right now. The one thing that I do know from talking to some of my friends is how booked all of the therapists actually are. So I would love to find out, and Velva, we'll start with you. If someone wanted to see you all now, what sort of lead time do they need to plan for?
Well, with outpatient, and I'm in a different world, just not mental health. We're in substance use disorder. So our clinic deals with people with substance use issues and challenges. So right now, usually about 2 weeks out, we can get you worked in. We do have an emergency number that they can call if they need some assistance immediately. We have crisis teams that can respond immediately if someone's in a crisis. And I think that's real important to know. And I'm sure Key Assets has the same. I think what we've learned through this, just like you said, Bill, you referenced that telehealth has been around, and it has. I mean, we were having discussions in our leadership meetings about telehealth prior to March. I think what COVID did was make us jump a little quicker through those hoops and get those platforms and get our staff trained. And there was a lot of trepidation even amongst mental health professionals. I'm not sure if Brant saw that, but we did. Even some of my peers out in the community who were like, well, I'm just not sure if it's as effective. But I think what COVID did, as you said, there's some good things that came out, is it let us go into areas and regions and reach people who had other barriers, childcare, transportation, those type of things. So what it has done is I think people feel like they can get in touch with a mental health provider and get in and hopefully see someone within a 2-week period. Because, when people have a crisis, they want to be seen right then. So we want to have that window of opportunity to get them in. So we do have people that we leave open schedule on their scheduler to have those folks that need to be seen immediately. And we've been able to do that quite rapidly. And even in my private practice world, we've been able to do that quite rapidly, which is a blessing for our community. And I know other practitioners have also been finding that to be true. So even though we've seen more people access services through telehealth, we've been able to respond pretty quickly and get them seen within a week or two, and some even within 24 hours if it is an emergency type situation. And I know other community mental health providers have been able to do the same, because I want you all to know we don't work in silos. We've worked with Key Assets, they've worked with us, we work with other mental health providers here in Lexington and outside communities, which is we're all in this together, as our governor says. So I think that we reach out and try to make sure to give a warm handoff and make sure that our community partners are involved in the treatment side of it.
And Brant, how about you guys in terms of, one of the things I didn't lead that question with is a lot of the times when people feel that they have a mental health issue, it is sort of an immediate crisis, or at least I assume it would be an immediate crisis. So how quickly can someone get in, call it for a standard appointment or a regular one, knowing like, hey, maybe I need a little, you have an annual physical, maybe you need an annual mental. So that there's that one. But then the other thing is, if like Velva was saying, if I'm breaking down, are you guys ready?
Yeah, and I think you're very much on the point there, Bill, is that, usually when somebody's reaching out for services, this is somebody who is immediately reached the point that they can't take it anymore. And so they've reached the level where they feel that they need to get that service as quickly as possible. And we follow a lot of the same, personally, I have an expectation of trying to get somebody in the 72-hour window. I know that's not realistic in the real world, especially in the way we live today, but we're looking at that 1 to 2 week window. Obviously for us, what we do is we try to find those openings. If we get a referral and we have somebody who needs services, we don't sit there and wait 2-3 weeks to find till somebody's ready. We find that opening as quickly as we possibly can to get somebody in and get them the help that they need, because the fear, not really the fear, but some of the concern is that if we don't intervene within that short period of time, then we don't know what the next step is for that individual. Is that, is that suicide? Is that a homicide? Is that some kind of other detrimental aspect that ends up being more harmful than it was, when they reached out to us? And so the ultimate goal of, community health partners and things like Key Assets and New Vista is working on helping prevent people from being hospitalized. That's like the last option. That's not the first option. So if we can get somebody in quickly and in a routine pattern of getting services, we're going to be more successful in preventing that. And I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but ultimately, coming back to it is that we are looking at that 1 to 2 week window of what we're trying to get people in. And, and we are always being diligent and cognizant that if we have openings, we fill those openings, rather than saying, oh, well, they called on a Thursday, so we're not going to book them until next week. If there's something on that Thursday or there's something on that Friday, we're going to do everything we can to get you in.
That's great.
That's great to know. That's great to know. Well, we also know that the holidays can kind of, typically add a layer of stress, even without the pandemic. So this year, and then, this year we have so many opportunities where people are not necessarily going to be able to gather, or they feel maybe they're taking the risk by gathering. And so there's added stress with that. Are there any steps that you all are recommending to help people manage the stress during holidays? Maybe things you normally would say each year, but maybe some enhanced steps that people could take and advice you could give for this year? And Bella, I can start with you.
Okay. Well, I actually used the analogy of Cindy Lou Who the other day with some of my clients, and because they were all, as we all are, trying to prepare for how this is going to look different this holiday season. And so the analogy I use is, even though the Grinch took all their gifts and their Who pudding and everything they took, they still all gathered together and were thankful and grateful they had each other. So I was talking to some clients, and we were talking about Zooming with families, doing things differently this year, but that are safe. And I think that's today, with the governor's announcement of what this is going to look like, we've got to look at how can we do this safely, but still have our families involved. So I've heard a few of my clients say they're going to Zoom with their family, all sit down at the same time to a meal and Zoom it together. And just kind of, still have that family feeling, but be safe. Another thing that I recommend for our clients to do is, during the holiday season, it's stressful anyway with normal circumstances, is, being there for one another, listening to folks, listen to yourself. Listening is some great advice I took many years ago from a supervisor, and I use that now. To just listen to our family members, our peers, and be there for them and be supportive. And also, there's some great activities you can do over Zoom with your family members, your grandchildren. I don't know about you guys, but I've got family all over. So it's going to look different for us too. So I like to take my own advice, and I'm going to Zoom with my family. We're going to drop off packages for for Christmas, and we're just not going to be in together, but we're all going to take a deep breath and say, this is temporary. This is not forever. And by this time next year, I hope that will be back together. So I think having some mindfulness of being grateful for what we do have. And I recommend gratitude journals every day to write down things that you're grateful for, because I think sometimes we focus so much on the negative of what's going on around us, and with social media and the news 24 hours, it can be overwhelming for any of us. I don't know about you guys, but I feel overwhelmed myself sometimes. So sometimes just journaling, writing things down, because we're living during historical times. And these are things that you're going to be telling your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and family members. So I try to look at it as, this is going to be okay. We're going to be okay through this. It's going to look a little different this year. But journaling and writing down your feelings, so that a year from now, I love the thing on Facebook that pops up, like, this is what you're doing a year ago, because I forget what I was doing a year ago. I don't know about you guys, but I think this is going to be a good reminder of things that we can work with our family and our friends on, is being mindful of our gratefulness for, even though there's a pandemic amongst us, we still are all very grateful to live in our communities. We're Kentuckians, we are strong, and we will get through this together. We will.
Great words of advice, Bella. Brant, what about you? What are some thoughts, especially I know that you work for so much with children, and I'm sure that in the residential homes it's been a little different, where they haven't necessarily always been in school. So what kind of advice or thoughts do you all have, or how are you helping with having the kids cope?
Yeah, I think, on our end, which is a little different in some regards, but it's all about trying to remain as consistent as possible. You may not be able to always be able to get together with those exact family members or those processes, but still having some consistency. And I think, for example, me and my wife, we're not going to be able to do Thanksgiving with our family this year just because of the risk. So, that's a good opportunity that, I'm using to work with staff and then also work with other clients, is that this is a good opportunity to create new traditions. We've had the opportunities of, we've done some things so consistently for years. My grandparents did this, so we're going to keep doing this. Well, now's a good opportunity for us to try a new tradition, different activities and different hobbies going and keeping our minds active, are not dwelling on so much of the negative stuff. One of the good things that one of a staff member has done is, the idea of creating a time capsule, with some of the stuff that we're dealing with right now, and trying to bearing that and then coming back to that in a couple of years to see how ridiculous all this was, and so I think there is, going back to what Velva said, is that this is a temporary problem. This isn't a long-term issue, and I think if we can remain strong and understand that each individual is fighting their own fight, and they've got their own battle that's going on through this process, and if we can learn to just appreciate that a little bit and understand we're capable of getting through all this. And this is a very important time where you have to rely on the support systems that you do have, whether if it's a phone call, if it's a Zoom meeting together for Thanksgiving, whatever it may be. Let's not take for granted those little things that we do have. And I think that's really what's trying to do for us, is instill that there's still little glimmers of hope, and there's still, positivity out there. We just have to look a little harder than maybe we did last year for it. So.
Yeah, we actually have talked about having another session of organizations that have sort of changed their business to adapt to our changing environment. And, one of those, a friend of mine runs the breakout rooms, and they, in March, had to go to a virtual breakout room, and they didn't know what would happen. And what they do is their employees, who are tested and masked and everything, wear a little iPhone sort of case, and you direct them. And they were amazed about how many families actually got together from multiple states and countries to do the breakout room event together. And so there are a number of other organizations. I know there's a guy who used to do bourbon tastings, and he would take people around, and now he's doing virtual ones where you go out and buy it, and then you can bring everyone together in a Zoom. So are there things like that you all have heard of people doing that we can share essentially with our audience? Because I can tell you, with two kids at home and work, I'm starting to wonder if I'm permanently changed, or if maybe this will get back to normal and there's a gradual thing. But I would love to see like a list, and I don't know if you all have it or if this is something that you think we should put together, of activities that you can do that are safe, especially because during the holidays, as Debbie mentioned, we've got some older folks who are typically part of family traditions and more susceptible. So any thoughts or ideas about neat things to do, either online or using some of these tools?
You're putting me on the spot, and I really don't have a list for you on that. But
It's okay. I'm just an open question.
Some things that I have, come across that I've been a little fascinated with, and is that, like a lot of our board games. Remember back in the day when we used to play the board games all the time? Well, now a lot of those are moving virtually. So,
Yeah.
trying to be able to get those interactions throughout, the process. Like, I mean, I think you mentioned earlier, our technology for the process of this kind of video conferencing stuff has jumped 2 years quicker than we ever expected it to be. So there's a lot more access to, like, video games or other type, like board games that have become more video games, I guess, if that's what I'm trying to say. Not your traditional like Xbox and PlayStation stuff, but your Monopolies, your Battleships, and all those fun
Mm-hmm.
kid games that we can start utilizing through the telehealth type of model. And so I don't really have an exact website or list for that, but that is some of the stuff that I have come across in like my own just dubbing and research and things like that I think is very beneficial, especially with younger age kids.
Yeah, that's a great example. One thing also that I'll mention both to for you all to share with the people who come to see you, but also the people who are watching this later, is there is a shortage of IT equipment that people would normally associate with doing things like this. So if you need to get a webcam or you need to get a decent microphone or some things like that, I would order it now so that you know that you can get it in time for some of the events. Now, Thanksgiving being next week, maybe it's not going to happen overnight, but certainly by mid-December, there will definitely be, if you don't have the webcam at home and things like that, you could get that. And then Vilma, from your standpoint, any recommendations as to some things that families might be able to do together? I think Brandt's idea of the games is a great one. Anything from your perspective?
Right. I guess I know when this first happened, being a former employee of Fayette County Public Schools, I was reaching out to some of my former peers, and they had online zoo tours, which was awesome. The San Diego Zoo, you could go live and tour the zoo, which I thought was amazing. So there was a list out there of museums and zoos that the parents could log in and for them to see. Also, there is a wonderful Jeopardy Labs online if you love the game Jeopardy in honor of Alex Trebek. Some families are doing that. Some play therapists are doing that with children online, which is really good. We do it, and even in the recovery world of Jeopardy, so it's Jeopardy Labs. And Bamboozle, BAAMBOOZLE, has a scavenger hunt online to do with kids and your family. So there's some great resources out there to do. Again, as Brandt said, things are going to look a little different this year, but it doesn't have to be sad. It can be very happy. And I think traditions are more for us as parents and grandparents, children. And let me say this, children watch how we as adults respond. So if we respond calmly and we make it fun, and children will react. They watch us. So I recommend too for families. I've had a lot of moms recently contact me who are, they're being a teacher, they're being a cafeteria worker, they're being a bus driver, they're being a mom, a wife. They're doing a little bit of everything. So one recommendation that I thought was great that we discussed in a group was for them to even have a little area maybe in the house just for moms or caregivers to go to and make it comfortable for them to go read a book, to listen to a podcast, and you can do that with children and let them decorate that little area for them just to have to themselves. Because I think right now we're all in our homes together and we're feeling a little on top of one another at times. So it can be, I'm not talking about a big physical space, just a little tiny corner in a room or whatever, but a beanbag chair, a light, a lamp, whatever it is. I don't know if y'all remember those old lava lamps from the 70s. I have one in my office now. I love it. It calms me to look at it. So I think, again, trying to make our places, our spaces that we're all living in right now welcoming. But again, kind of feeling for what's going on in our families and being responsive to that and giving everybody a little grace right now. I say that a lot in my practice, give everybody a little grace. We're going to be a little bit on edge, and that's to be expected, but raising your hand and say, I need a timeout for myself. We put children in timeout sometimes when we want to change behaviors, but sometimes we as adults need to go take a little timeout and a little break to focus on ourselves, take some deep breathing. There's some wonderful apps out there also. Virtual Hope Box is one of my favorites. These are free things. I love free stuff. Calm, I'm sure y'all have heard of Calm. Headspace is one, and there's a WhatsApp app that I use a lot. So there's some great resources out there. A lot of times people just don't know what they're looking for. So again, there's some wonderful things that we can all tap into, and calling your friends, telling your friends when you're not feeling the best, hey, I'm feeling kind of heavy today. I tell you, it helps to know there's other people that are feeling the same way that we are. So there's some great resources out there. I wish I would have sent y'all some that I've used, but
you mentioned the Calm app. They actually sponsored some news station on election night, which I think is a brilliant advertising purchase.
Yes.
I can personally.
Sponsorship has extended a little bit.
Yes, I do. I will speak from experience with the meditation apps. They are really, really great.
They're very good.
And having an area where you can go, where you can get into a routine of doing something that puts you in a calmer state is really excellent. It's one of those things that I think we neglect. You hear a lot of people talk about how they're doing things for work and their kid and their family, but oftentimes people neglect to take care of themselves. And someone who I wish I could remember who told me this, they were speaking about business years ago, talking about, if you're the CEO, it's not that you're the chief executive officer only, you're also the chief emotional officer. And so all of the parents or the caregivers that are in the homes, I think, need to recognize that, like, their kids will feed off of whatever emotional items and triggers that they may have. So if they don't take care of themselves, it's going to be very difficult to take care of others.
Yes, that's a really good point. Well, so we know that the audience for this particular webinar that we do is, typically business owners or business leaders. Do you all have any thoughts about what employers can do to provide mental health coverage options or mental health breaks or anything in the workplace as people are trying to juggle so much at the same time? Any tips for employers from that perspective? And Belva, I'll start with you.
Okay, I think it's important, again, to know your employees and take some time to listen to them right now. I know a lot of companies have EAP programs that provide free counseling services, which I think is so important. I'm very much about servitude leadership. I'm here to serve you, to make your life easier, to make your job easier. As a director, that's one thing. And when I worked in Fayette County Schools, that's one thing I tried to do was bottom-up type leadership to help folks. So listen and look at your folks. If you see that they're going through something that, maybe because a lot of people don't go to their supervisors out of fear of retaliation sometimes, or just fear that they don't know what they're feeling. But I think to normalize it, I think the more we normalize this process, the more folks will reach out and know that they may need a little extra care. I think giving somebody the afternoon off just to go home, maybe, if that's where they need to be, if they're working from, if they're going into work, or just to have some time to themselves, provide them maybe with a caregiver for the day, or something that's in a safe and within the guidelines. I think that we're going to see more of this with our new guidelines coming out from the governor, I'm sure. So employers need to just be very mindful of watching what body language their employees are exhibiting, more of what they're not saying sometimes and what they are saying. Once you know your employees very well, but also giving them resources. Again, people don't know what they don't know. They don't know. When we talk about mental health, I'm just so glad that you guys are doing this, because it takes the stigma away from asking for help. I always tell my folks it's a strength to ask for help. It's not a weakness. It's a strength to know, hey, I need a little help right now with this. I'm not feeling as good as I normally are. And I think our younger generation is doing much better at that than people in my age range, sometimes asking for that help. So I think employers offering and reminding the employees what services they are in counseling or mental health or substance use, anything they can do to remind their employees of that we have these services and this is how you access them. Because what happens is when you get your daily grind, sometimes you get so frazzled, you don't even know it, and you think, I'll be okay, just don't know how to access it. So easy access to these services.
Okay.
That is so important because our folks, our employees right now have enough on them. They're wearing many hats right now. And as Bill said, self-care is so important. We get so involved in taking care of everyone else. Sometimes we don't take care of ourselves.
One of the, an acquaintance of mine who is in a leadership role at a local school, one of the best practices that he does that I thought really made sense is that he reserves one full day a week that anybody that works for him, he sets up basically office hours, if you will, and anybody that works for him can call him or Zoom with him between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. And it can be about anything. It can be work related, it can be personal, it can be any challenge. And I thought, that takes a lot of discipline as a leader to be able to set aside a full day like that for just employee outreach. But he said the response has been overwhelming. And what it's helped do is it's helped head off issues becoming bigger issues. And it's helped head off people taking time off when they might just take a mental health day and not ever talk to him about it. He might not ever know what the issue was. And so it's actually improved the productivity and improved the connection. So, I might encourage employers to consider implementing something like that. If it's not a full day, maybe there's a half a day every other week that, depending on the size of your company, that you could dedicate to that. It's really improved that relationship that he's had with his employees. And Brant, I didn't mean to, shortchange you. So tell us what your thoughts are too.
Well, I think a lot of my thoughts are going to echo what Velva stated, but a lot of employers have employee assistance programs that they're there for their employees. But I think, looking at someone in a leadership role, you really have to be at this time, you have to be flexible. You have to be understanding, and ultimately you have to be patient with your staff. Many of our staff are facing situations that nobody ever planned for. There's no book to go back to. There's no manual for this. There's no nothing. So we really have to be aware of that, like you mentioned, earlier, Bill and, Velva and Debbie, is that, some of our staff are fitting in 6 different roles within an 8-hour workday. So how could we expect them to always be present in the work environment? So when it comes to that, being flexible, being understanding, and being patient is kind of going back to the point of what are community support systems that we have in our community? We're very fortunate and very blessed here in Fayette County to have a lot of community supports right now. And that, whether that's something as a food box, whether that's, going to the food pantry and helping a family who's struggling financially because one of their spouse lost their job. And so they don't know if they're going to have the food. Those all things come to play when we work with other individuals that sometimes we don't get to know those things. And so being able to know those resources, being able to at least have the awareness and a sense of comfortableness to have that conversation with an employee that I can see you're struggling. What can we do to help you? We may not be able to help you, but at least we can try to figure it out together. And I think that's where you have to go back to that genuineness of being in your leadership role and being a supervisor and being a boss, is that, the bottom line is always the bottom line, but if you don't have the staff and your staff aren't supported and feel cared for, then what's that bottom line really matter? And I think that's kind of where we go to.
We are coming up with just a few minutes left in our program. Everyone knows that we try to end promptly at 4:45. You probably saw a few links come across your chat, and those are from Kelly about Commerce Lexington resources related to COVID-19. Also, how we're also promoting this and sharing it out. And if any of our panelists or any of our guests do have ideas for things to do to kind of blow off some steam, relax, get some peace and quiet, whatever it may be, feel free to share that, and then we'll add those in, or you can put them in the comments on the YouTube channel. Brant and Velva, Debbie and I superbly admire what you all are able to do for the community, you both individually and for your companies. The mental health thing, especially rolling into the holidays, as Debbie mentioned, will be a pretty big deal. And depending on what our governor has said today, it might be a bigger deal. So with that being said, what we'll do is we'll wrap up. The video will be online within 24 hours, and anyone who's registered for the event will get that. And then if there are any materials that people send in to us, our email actually will follow on a PowerPoint slide right after the video cuts off here. Feel free to send that in, and I'll make sure that goes out to the video for everyone who's registered, whether they attended today or not. And then we'll put that online as well. Debbie, any final comments before we wrap for the day?
Well, just want to thank Velda and Brant very much for their time today. And obviously, Bill, thank you to you as well. Just as a note, Bill and I are going to be meeting with the staff at Commerce Lexington in early December to lay out kind of the game plan for the 4 o'clock focuses for 2021. So if you receive the survey link after attending today's seminar and you have ideas for topics for us, or maybe different formats or anything that you'd like to see, please share that via the survey and we'll take that into consideration when we meet. So thank you to everybody for your time this afternoon, and hope you all have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.